Hello, it's Ruslan, I'm from Russia and I still trying to make my YouTube channel where I watch some video from India, some video about India and then make my reactions video. Today I will watch video, the name of this video, The Rise of India is about more than just population. Okay, interesting theme. Let's start our video.
Each era has its own peculiarities and its own champions. The Second World War and the decades that followed saw the explosive growth of US power.
Now
The 1970s
USA
and 80s witnessed the Japanese economic miracle.
champion
By contrast,
and
the
boss
first two
about
decades of
our
the 21st
life.
century were dominated by the great rise of China. Over the years, for various reasons, Indians have been rather passive spectators of these events. But this is changing. India is now the world's most populous country, and according to various projections, will be 2 or 3 times more populous than China by the end of the century. India has recently overtaken the economy of its historic colonizers, the British, to become one of the world's top 5 economies. India is experiencing steady high GDP growth. Will the 2020s and the decades to come be dominated by questions about India? All the evidence suggests that it will. But reducing the causes of India's growth only to a generous demographic dividend can be misleading. What makes the Indian cause unique? What is the basis of India's growth? And how does Delhi's path differ from China's? We seek answers to these questions and many more.
Yes, it's very
in this
interesting
episode.
question.
Welcome to the 20s Report.
Way of India. It's not the same way like China.
Consider leaving a like if you enjoyed the video to aid the algorithm.
Because China's
Since the dawn of time,
system
India has been a key location
is
for the
very
formation of
totalitarian
human
system, I think.
Nearly 5,000 years ago, the Indus Valley civilization was formed along one of the world's longest rivers. The vast Indus Delta is a very fertile area, providing excellent conditions for forming the first organized human communities. Interestingly, the archaeological site of Mirgarh in present-day
Mountains
Pakistan dates
and
back
river.
to 7,000 before Christ, so before the Sumerian civilization. For millennia,
many
the
years
geography of the region
ago.
has determined both its resource wealth and its separation from the rest of the Eurasian supercontinent.
Yes,
To the
because
north,
of
the Indian
mountains.
subcontinent is firmly fenced off by the mighty mountain range of the Himalayas.
Himalaya,
While to the
yes.
south, the tooth-shaped
Ocean.
Indian subcontinent is washed by the waters of the Indian
Yes.
Ocean. It is a
India is
self-sufficient,
like
vast area of
island.
more than 4 million square kilometers, with many internal barriers, deserts, rivers, mountains, bays and islands. These conditions have historically led to 2 fundamental phenomena: the development of hundreds of different cultures and languages within the Indian subcontinent, which from time to time came together to form a quasi-unified entity. And secondly, the absence of frequent external interference due to geographical barriers, compared to Europe, for example. There were, of course, exceptions to this rule. For example, Alexander the Great reached India in 326 BC. There was also the Mughal invasion in the 16th century. Both armies crossed the Khyber Pass in modern Pakistan, whereas the Arabs gradually extended their influence by sea. Nevertheless, the area was generally inwardly concentrated. Everything changed with the era of geographical exploration and the arrival of the British. From 1600, with the creation of the British East India Company, London gradually subordinated the territory to its interests. It brought enormous wealth to the colonizers and was therefore called the jewel in the crown of the empire. The quest for independence had been with Indians for centuries, but it was only with the weakening of the British after the Second World War that it became a reality. The year 1947 brought a break from the yoke of London, the unification of more than 500 princely states within India, and the partition of the territory into India and Pakistan.
Yes.
India set out on its own path, but it was an extremely difficult one from the start.
Yes,
Delhi
very
was
difficult,
at the bottom of the economic ladder. This, combined with a rapidly growing population,
because of
made the
colonization.
country synonymous with poverty, pollution and lack of education. In the decades that followed, this and the conflict with Pakistan
Very
defined
difficult
India's image
way.
in the eyes of the rest of the world. It also
And
prompted
Pakistan
millions of Indians
conflict,
to leave the
yes.
country in search of a better life. The Indian diaspora is now one of the largest in the world. According to some sources, the number may be in excess of 30
Wow.
million, taking
Big
into account
diaspora.
people who are second or subsequent generation expatriates. There is a lot of truth in this image of India that has been painted by films such as Slumdog Millionaire. The country is still plagued by the problems mentioned above,
watch
but
this
this image
film.
can be a symbol for India of an era that is now passing. What is the rationale for this? 1,400,000,000 people.
Wow.
It is the size of India's population that is the first and most important
Population
issue
is
when starting
so
to think
big.
about India.
Very big.
The scale is hard to imagine, and there is more to come. The peak
Wow.
of 1,700,000,000 will not be reached until the 2060s, a population peak that China is experiencing right now. This means that by the year 2100, depending on the projections, there will be 2 to 3 times as many Indians as Chinese. The average Indian is now 28
Wow.
years old, while the average Chinese is 39. More than 40% of India's population
Very
is under
young
the age
population.
of 25. A
Very
massive
young.
population
Wow.
naturally translates into impressive macroeconomic indicators. India is already the world's 5th largest economy and will be the 3rd largest by the end of the
economy.
decade, behind the US and China. It took 31
Yes.
years for Delhi to build a $3 trillion economy. To grow it by another $3 trillion, Indians will need just 7 more years.
7 more
But to
years?
suggest that India will
Just
be the champion in the
7
next
more
decade
years?
or decades on the basis of its huge
Wow,
population
India
alone is a
economic
rather risky
growing
proposition.
so
Of
fast.
course, it is a key factor in Delhi's rise to prominence, arguably a necessary one. But to escape the image of China's underdeveloped poor neighbor, something more is needed. And India has that. But let's start with the basics. Between 2016 and 2022, when most people in the West were busy discussing Donald Trump's presidency or the coronavirus pandemic, the number of Indians
Yes.
living in abject poverty
COVID and
fell
Donald
from
Trump.
126 million in 2016 to 15 million in 2022. Over a
Wow.
longer time horizon, this number has fallen by
Good.
nearly 400 million in the last 30 years. When people don't have to think
Wow.
about how to get food every
It's
minute,
great.
their goals and actions naturally change. What's more,
Yes.
this process has coincided in India with the massive expansion of internet access.
Yes. Я почищу тебе
This
потом.
brings us to one of the most important
Идите,
statistics of the
пожалуйста.
current
Отойдите,
decade.
пожалуйста.
In 2009, about 5%
И закрой
of
дверь,
Indians have
Саш.
access to the internet, about 60 million people. According to the Digital 2022 India report, India already had around 790
Wow,
million
so
internet
fast.
users, or 57% of the
Individual
population.
using
By 2030,
internet.
it will be over 90%. That's over 1,200,000,000 people, the most in the world. Of course, almost 1 billion Chinese are also connected to the internet. So what's all the fuss
Yes.
about? Firstly, the improvement of China's internet network has also been part of the country's economic success in recent years. However, there is a rather
Yes.
significant difference between India and China. One is that Indians speak English, and that changes everything. The
Yes.
Chinese, despite being the largest
English.
national group on the internet, for
Indians
the time being,
speak
are essentially
to
cut
English
off from the rest
language.
of the world. Even if you get around
Chinese
the geo
don't speak
restrictions with a
English.
VPN, there is still a language barrier.
Yes.
The language barrier that
Language
for a big
barrier.
part of the Indian population is non-existent. And this means that
I want to
700
know
million new
English.
users have joined the Western internet in the last decade, with another 500 million to follow
Wow.
in the
A
next
lot
few
of
years.
people.
Why is this so important? Because the internet is the biggest opportunities equalizer in the world.
Biggest
Wikipedia
opportunities
gives you access to the
equalizer in
world's
the
biggest
world.
encyclopedia. Google and YouTube are the world's biggest
Opportunity
universities.
equalizer.
And podcasts
Wow.
on Spotify let you listen to the world's most influential people in business, physics, or the media. All for
Yes,
free.
it's great.
And all in English. A teenager who went hungry
Internet
every day a
is-
few years ago, for example, now has access to a knowledge base that a member of India's richest caste
We
could
have-
only dream of 3 decades ago.
Wow.
Of course, the starting point is still extremely low, but now with the help of the internet and AI, breaking out of poverty and attaining at least middle-class status is no longer just a dream. There is also another aspect whose importance cannot be overlooked. The great Indian emigration, motivated by the search for a better life, was directed mainly to the United States. The children of these emigrants were already born or brought up in the US, and their drive for money, technology and business was extraordinary. This is illustrated by the representation of Indians at the top of major US companies: Alphabet, Microsoft, Novartis, Adobe, IBM. These are just the top 5 of the 27 billion-dollar plus companies
Indians are great managers.
Beyond the
yes.
CEO positions, there are
Good
thousands
managers.
of developers, entrepreneurs, or angel investors like Naval Ravikant or Balaji Srinivasan, who serve as role models for the millions of Indians who are just getting connected to the digital world. The numbers are beginning to show the change that is taking place. In 2016, there were 452 startups in India. By 2022, there were 84,000 such companies. Combined venture capital funding of startups in 2022 and 2021 reached $64
Indians
billion.
are great startuppers, yes?
Years, between 2012 and 2020.
It's very interesting.
$54 billion was raised.
You have a lot of
But importantly,
good thoughts
this change is being felt not only by Indian
for
entrepreneurs,
internet
but also by
and
civil
mobile
servants.
apps, yes?
None of this would have happened without India Stack. During a visit to India, Bill Gates commented on the India Stack, saying, quote, "India is on the cusp of leapfrogging, and it truly is. Considering
This guy is very smart guy.
Offering such an open and secure API. India is certainly looking at taking the Digital India campaign to a whole new level." What is Gates talking about? India Stack has such a fundamental impact on the potential development of India that we need to take a moment to look at it. In 2009, not only did 5% of Indians have access to the internet, but only 17% of them had a bank account. Hundreds of millions of people were cut off from the financial system, resulting in a huge loss of productivity,
payment
tax
system,
revenue, and socioeconomic
without
development.
banking cards.
In addition, in 2009, 400 million Indians had no identity document at all.
2009. Wow!
Also in 2009, the Aadhaar system, which means
400
foundation in
million
Hindi,
without
was
passports?
launched, ushering in a sea change. The first of the 3 layers of India Stack, Aadhaar, is the world's largest biometric system, described by
I hear about this
Paul Romer
card
as the world's most advanced identity document. A few years later, Aadhaar eKYC was introduced, which is essentially an electronic authentication system.
Чуть попозже
On
приду.
top of this comes the second layer of the India Stack.
Я чуть попозже, я доделаю и приду. Пока дверку закрой,
Which is a
пожалуйста.
real-time electronic payment system. As boring as it sounds, and without going into detail, the impact of eKYC and UPI has been unprecedented, and the statistics show it. Analysis by the Bank of International Settlements shows that it typically takes 46 years to bring 80% of the population into the financial system. India achieved this in 7 years.
7
and we are talking
years.
about a country of over 1 billion people.
So
World Bank
big
estimates
country
that Aadhaar
in
eKYC
just
has
7
reduced
years.
the cost of onboarding a new customer for banks and financial institutions from $23 to 15 cents. So we are talking about a cost reduction of 15,000%. As a result, the local telecom giant Reliance Jio acquired 100 million customers within 6 months of implementing eKYC. Such numbers are insane and are unlikely to be repeated in the future. Whereas the United Payments Interface, or UPI, in 4 years has become the 5th largest payment system in the world in terms of volume, after Visa, WeChat Pay, MasterCard, and PayPal. And in terms of real-time payment records, India has been first since 2020. The operating system is again based on a central body, the National Payments Corporation of India, which licenses banks to use the technology. The final layer of the India Stack brings all this data together. The Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture, or DEPA, is also the legal framework that defines how much of this data can be shared so that individuals or companies can protect it or use it for their own benefit. It is all encrypted and passes through an account aggregator, which acts as both a broker and a policeman in the exchange of data between different entities. This is a very general characterization of the system that has transformed India. A fuller description can be found in the
Иди,
article
пожалуйста, не мешай мне.
Internet Country on Tiger Feather's substance. Link in the description.
Не мешай, пожалуйста.
Nevertheless, the end result is that we have 700 million Indians connected to the internet, with another 500 million to come in the next few years. We also have one of the best biometric/financial/digital systems in the world. Soon more than 1 billion people from one of the poorest countries in the world will be competing in a single
Иди,
market with
пожалуйста.
the
Я
rest of
тебя
the
очень прошу.
English-speaking world at a fraction of the cost. And it's not just the services of programmers or IT in general. With the incredible growth of artificial intelligence, virtual reality and visual technologies, a whole new spectrum of remote
Wait a
services
second. Okay.
is opening up. India will be a major beneficiary. After all, who is most hungry to take advantage of this technological solstice, and who is best positioned to do so? Of course, nothing is ever black and white, and the world is much more nuanced. India has many hurdles ahead. In addition to the digital sphere, we have a physical one, and in this, Delhi continues to struggle with many issues. India's tax shows that India is trying to reform internally and is succeeding. However, bloated bureaucracy, a biased legal and tax system, and corruption mean that India remains a difficult place to do business. This is also shown by its 63rd place in the ease of doing business ranking.
Yes.
This is particularly evident in the manufacturing sector, whose contribution to GDP creation is very low given the country's potential. Compared to its neighbors, China, Bangladesh or Vietnam, where manufacturing accounts for between 22% and 28% of GDP, India's share of manufacturing in GDP is only 13% and has been declining for several years. The services sector, on the other hand, accounts for more than 50% of GDP.
Wow, declining.
8 million young Indians enter the labor market each year.
Wow,
However,
it's
only
good.
half of adult Indians are employed, compared to 2/3 of Chinese.
Every
Of those
year.
who are employed, 90% are in jobs without regular pay, stable hours or benefits. In 2021, 10 million people applied for 35,000 jobs in the Indian Railways. That meant 300 applicants for every job. For this reason, some analysts are skeptical about India's ability to seize the opportunity presented by the decoupling of Western, particularly US, companies from China. On paper, India is an ideal candidate, the world's largest young population, low cost per worker, and converging perceptions of China are obvious advantages. On the other hand, as Arvind Subramanian and Josh Fellman note in Foreign Policy, quote, in August 2022, nearly 80% of the $160 billion increase in the capitalization of India's stock market went to one conglomerate, the Adani Group, whose founder suddenly became the world's third richest person. In other words, the playing field may not be level for all. Nevertheless, it can be argued that India's stack is the beginning of a larger process of simplification and harmonization of rules and laws that have built up over the years. It will take many years, but the process is already underway. Both the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund are upbeat about India's future, despite the problems mentioned. The former stated that, quote, India is better positioned for global tensions than other major emerging economies, unquote. The IMF, on the other hand, pointed out that, quote, successful implementation of broad-based reforms and higher than expected dividends from digitalization could boost India's medium-term growth potential, unquote. The country's rapidly improving infrastructure could also influence positive sentiment. Spending is on the verge of breaking the $100 billion a year mark. The country is slowly completing its road network thanks to the Bharatmala project. The initiative is behind schedule, but is expected to involve the construction of 34,000 kilometers of roads and highways. The cost of the project is estimated at $130 billion. The Sagarmala project, on the other hand, aims to upgrade and build new ports and create special coastal economic zones. The cost? $116 billion. One sign that things are changing, even in manufacturing, is the actions of the world's most valuable company, Apple. Apple's manufacturing operations in India are just getting started. The company is outsourcing iPhone production to plants in southern India. Around 3 million units were produced in India in 2021, which may look poor compared to 230 million in China. However, given the improving domestic conditions in India and the fact that the company can spend 50% less on payouts than in China, the gap is sure to narrow. In September, Apple announced that it plans to manufacture 5 to 10% of its new iPhone 14 models in India. In November, Foxconn, the manufacturer of Apple devices, announced that it would build a $20 billion semiconductor plant in India with a local partner. A demographic dividend, especially one as large as India's, undoubtedly gives strength to the political center that wields power over it. But the real strength of the state comes not from the consolidation of the resources of millions of poor citizens, but from the collective of strong individuals. India has millions, but so far the vast majority of poor people. But the last few years have been about laying the foundations for productivity growth at the individual level, lifting millions out of extreme poverty, increasing access to the internet, and reducing barriers, combined with the growth in entrepreneurship that India's stack provides, is a combination that is hard to ignore. Of course, the country still has a myriad of structural problems, but if we cut through the noise and reflect on the key drivers of growth, there is much to suggest that India has what it takes. With this kind of introduction to the subject of India, which has been missing from this channel, I invite you today to an episode in which we look at how Delhi and the Modi government are exploiting this potential that they are inevitably aware of. Why do we see India so close to Russia, which is more or less China's junior partner? And will the potential described in this material be lost with the nationalist turn of the Indian People's Party of Prime Minister Modi? All this will soon be discussed. In a recent discussion with a YouTube analyst, she advised me to ask our audience for direct reactions to help the channel grow. So if you enjoyed this material, please give it a thumbs up or leave a comment to improve the algorithm.
Okay.
You might not...
Is it so? I think India have a great potential to be biggest economy and be a greatest country of our planet, because Indian culture and Indian experience to how to organized so big population to live together and live with happiness, with developed, with all of this. I think India have a great experience, and now population of India is so young. It's very big power. I think young population want to be a fuel to do our planet best and best and best. And I want to see the future times when India be a very big, great country. Now it's like this, but in future I think India have so big experience for past and so big potential for future. And this mixed, and I hope we see like new India is born, I think. Okay, this is my reaction on this interesting information video. Thanks for watching this video with me. Please subscribe to my channel, please support me. Your support is very important for me. I love to read commentaries and write answers. Okay, see you later. Bye bye.